Throughout gaming history, narrative stakes have risen higher and higher as the technology to portray them has improved. Presentation has led to more ambition, and probably the furthest logical extreme of stakes in video games is just having the world end. Yeah, today we're going to be talking about how various apocalypses have been portrayed in gaming and look at how each one works and the different things they try to achieve. Let's start off with a game that has an interesting history with me, Crystalis. Apocalypse stories have undoubtedly gotten more popular and prominent in the past few decades, but examples of these narratives can be traced all the way back to the NES era. That's when we got Crystalis, an action RPG that was released in 1990 and predicted the future in which there were only 7 years left until what the game describes as the End Day, also known as my father's favorite holiday. On that day, nuclear war would break out around the globe, which would basically destroy the entirety of human civilization. The game picks up 100 years later when the protagonist awakens from the cryogenic sleep and discovers what the world has become a century after the apocalypse. The radiation has caused creatures to mutate into scary guys, and what few humans are left alive are unequipped to save themselves from their onslaught. Humankind, perhaps fearing a repeat of the nuclear Armageddon, has cast science and technology aside in favor of pursuing the study of magic instead, which is similar to a game we'll be talking about a bit later. A floating tower placed high in the sky keeps a watchful eye on the world below, armed with an arsenal of weapons meant to keep the peace among the surviving population. And a sinister foe named Dragon is trying to claim the power of the tower for himself in order to unleash his own second end day, which is bad. Crystalis presents a lot of complexity in its story, as well as in its gameplay, at least for the time. The idea of protecting a doomed world from someone trying to override it is compelling, because what about the people whose lives will be lost in that struggle for a quote-unquote perfect future? In a lot of ways, it hits on the same notes as Splatoon would some 30 years later. It's an interesting setup, especially for an NES title, but these scenarios would only become more interesting in the next generation. Video games that involve apocalyptic scenarios typically approach the concept in one of two ways. Either you have to stop the end of the world, or you have to survive a world that has long since been brought to collapse. It's pretty uncommon for you to travel the world before and after an apocalypse. That's exactly how it is in Final Fantasy VI, though. Yes, I'm really talking about this game again. You spend hours endearing yourself to the plight of the Returners as you push back against the Gestalian Empire's nefarious campaign to conquer the world with magic that has resurfaced for the first time in a millennia. You build a bizarre team that includes a feral child, a girl who can paint monsters into existence, and even a dancing Moogle, which are these cute little furry guys. A general who defects from the Empire impersonates an opera singer as a purple octopus tries to drop an exactly 4-ton weight on her head. Hell, the martial artist of your team can successfully suplex a fucking ghost train. But then Kefka, a crazed clown working for the Emperor, absorbs the power of the gods of magic before going full genocidal maniac and raising the planet just for the hell of it right when you think the game is wrapping up. Millions of people die. The once beautiful landscape is shattered and withered, with the continents completely restructured and locations you thought you knew changed forever. Your party is scattered to the ends of whatever dirt mountains remain, all with different reasons for why they ended up where they ended up. A year passes in this transformed world of ruin, and those who haven't succumbed to despair only endure by grasping onto whatever small pleasures remain unspoiled. It's impressive how Final Fantasy VI is able to craft this rich, vibrant environment and then shatter it beyond recognition, a demonstration of the indiscriminate cruelty of chaos that can extinguish joy and happiness without warning. Even after everyone reunites to avenge the fallen and kill Kefka, the world remains a broken mess. It's through this the game is able to explore its ideas the best. Positive nihilism, with the party finding their own meaning in life in an inherently meaningless world. While Kefka uses meaninglessness as a bludgeon and excuse to destroy, every member of the Returners finds their own way to move forward in a world without meaning, one that can be destroyed at any moment. Another SNES-era RPG from Square is a different take on the end of the world. In Chrono Trigger, you accidentally go to a desolate future and find out that the world ended 1,000 years after you were alive. This apocalypse scenario stems from an exospiky interstellar beak porcupine alien named Lavos. This parasite landed on Earth around 65 million BC and began sucking power out of the planet. Over the course of millions of years, it siphoned off enough energy to finally unleash its lava spawn, which are meant to find other planets and repeat the cycle. This event takes place in 1999 AD, but due to some time travel nonsense, Lavos can also awaken in 12,000 BC. There are several methods and time periods you can fight Lavos in, and in order to save the planet from becoming a futuristic wasteland where life is hanging on by a thread, you have to choose one. With a ragtag group of companions recruited from every era of time that you can visit, you mount an assault on Lavos and prevent the apocalypse from ever happening. In one instance, you crash your time machine, the Epic, straight into its stupid beaked face, eliminating a third of the battle but stranding you at the Day of Lavos. In another, you go through the menacing Black Omen, a palace designed to siphon its energy. After you've beaten the game once, you can also fight Lavos from the beginning of the game if you really want to. Regardless, all roads and timelines lead to the Great Alien Porcupine and the battle to save the world, though make sure you tie up every loose end before doing that. After all, depending on when you choose to fight Lavos, the ending isn't always ideal. If you don't help fight off the dinosaurs, for instance, the world becomes run by reptilian humanoids. It's a great touch to have when you fight the main villain matter in such a logical way. Jumping a generation ahead, in The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, a looming lunar landing of world-ending proportions hangs over the land, and there's not much you can do to stop it. So what are you supposed to do with 3 days until complete global annihilation? What are the best ways to use the last 72 hours of your time on this planet? It's not really clear, and Majora's Mask shows us all sorts of different answers to that question as we journey through its beautifully macabre world. This clash of innocent altruism against a backdrop of pre-apocalypse tension makes Majora's Mask more humbly horrific than anything else in the Zelda series. It's got a low-frequency buzz of anxiety that's always humming. What's worse is that nobody in power seems to hear it, which is depressingly accurate. The moon is ridiculously close to the ground, and all most people can say is that you shouldn't look at the sky, with anybody urging those to evacuate being disregarded as insane. It's really interesting how Majora's Mask portrays how apathy can make a bad situation even worse, and I'm all for it. The game then teaches you, through a lot of trial and error, that the only way to really solve apathy like this is through empathy of your own. Through a mix of charity and curiosity, you connect to Termina's wide-spectrum societies. You join a gang of child activists, bring a fishwoman back her eggs after they've been taken by pirates, unite star-crossed lovers after 3 grueling days, and rescue cows from invading UFOs. You carry these stories with you forever, symbolized by the masks on your inventory screen. Bringing them all together summons a fierce deity, the ultimate transformation mask that makes you completely overpowered, and the culmination of all the friendship and hardship you've experienced along the way. Then, once you lay the killing blow on Majora, just like that, it's all gone. The moon is cast away and a new day dawns. But what about this strange world the Majora's Mask took place in? Can we ever go back, or has Hyrule pushed it aside for good, like a dream you can never quite remember? I hope it's the latter, because Majora's Mask is the most beautiful thing Nintendo has ever developed, and to revisit in a later title would ruin its dreamlike, ephemeral state. But who says the apocalypse has to be the end of the world? At first glance, it's not immediately obvious that The Legend of Zelda The Wind Waker takes place in a post-apocalyptic world, because it's one of the most beautiful, lively, and seemingly peaceful iterations of Hyrule in the series. Under the surface, though, lies the remnants of a whole other version of Hyrule that met with a terrible fate. Sometime after the events of Ocarina of Time, Ganondorf escaped his imprisonment and threatened to wreak havoc on the world, but when it came time for a legendary hero to show up and take care of business, Link was nowhere to be found. Without a champion to save the day, the people of Hyrule turned to the gods themselves for help. In typical godly fashion, their answer was to basically hit a gigantic reset button on the world by decimating everything with a massive flood. As a result, what once were the tallest peaks in Hyrule are now the islands of the Great Sea. Some remnants of the old days, like the Great Deku Tree, found ways to endure, while new deities like the Sky Spirit Dragon Valu filled this new world with wonder. The surviving Hylian people built new villages and ships to explore the seas. The wood-dwelling Kokiri people became the adorable Koruks to spread seeds across the ocean in hopes of growing new forests. The aquatic Zora people evolved into the Rito tribe, taking on more bird-like qualities to travel the skies for some fucking reason. You'd think Zoras would thrive in a giant ocean. And the Gorons? Well, they just kept on being Gorons. In a strange twist, Ganondorf's nefarious plan was actually to undo the apocalypse in order to save the drowned world he hails from. Of course, he only wanted to do that so he could rule over it, which would be kind of worse, and also, it would kill a lot of the people who live in the Great Sea already, so in effect, your quest is to prevent one apocalypse by saving another, just like Crystalis. The Wind Waker may hide some dark secrets and presumably a whole lot of death, but aside from the giant squids, obnoxious bird creatures, and Tingle having his own island for some reason, this apocalypse isn't half bad. The Pikmin series actually presents a pair of planets that both qualify for inclusion in this video. One post-apocalyptic and another on the brink of total collapse. Let's begin with the latter. Pikmin 3 introduced us to the world of Kopai, a planet packed so full of hungry people that they managed to deplete their entire global food supply. Seeking salvation amongst the stars, a trio of Kopai's best and brightest take off into space to try to find another world out there somewhere that might still have food available. The team succeeds, crash landing on the same planet from the first 2 Pikmin games, which is only known as PNF 404. The games present this world as a future Earth, though one in which humankind has apparently died out or disappeared. All that remains are relics of human civilization, like product placement Duracell batteries for some reason. Throughout the course of the games, the Pikmin captains scavenge the Earth's resources, so I guess it's nice to know we'll still be useful to random tiny aliens when we all die. Those were just a small sliver of the various ways the apocalypse has manifested in video games over the years. There are a ton I didn't even include on purpose, like Fallout New Vegas, because I don't have things to say about every single one. From generation to generation and game to game, the apocalypse is often portrayed drastically differently. A mutant uprising worth protecting. A massive twist that shakes up the entire game and fills the party with nihilistic vigor. A foreboding possible future that the main cast works to prevent. A looming threat over the world with the deepest sense of dread you've ever seen in a work of art. A serene deep blue sea. A grim yet beautiful depiction of our own planet. This has been Arcade Everlasting. To include that passive tingle from my dad, signing off. Thank you for watching.